You guys have seen it. It's not as like, oh, Mrs. Ferguson's fabulous thing. Yeah, old news. I will tell you in a minute. First of all, if anybody wants to check out Thorin's key with which he opened the secret door later after class, you can. I have an art of the week problem. I have too much. I brought some artwork, and I'm just going to throw this out here. Dante is living and writing. Hey, Alex and Sophie, we need to stop. Dante is living and writing at the beginning of the Renaissance in art. You remember the Divine Comedy is set in the year 1300. He's writing like between 1308 and 1320 something, you know, but it's set in the year 1300. Already there is a shift in art, and it's happening in his home of Florence. Florence was a hotbed of early Renaissance. And I brought in, it was for the junior high kids, but I might as well let it kill two birds with one stone, as they say, kill many birds with several stones. I don't know. I have two early Renaissance artists. Cimabue, who I just like to say his name because it sounds funny. Cimabue. And Giotto, that's a G, Giotto, are both living and working around the time of Dante. And so I scattered some art around. I'm just going to kind of let you take a look as you leave, if you want to. These are all Giotto. You know, art previously was of Eastern type. It's Byzantine. I'm not going to take the time to walk around the room because this is pretty big. Rather flat, not a lot of depth. And I was telling the other class, I always like to look at the way clothing drapes in pictures. It's just very, you know, sometimes it's very stiff. And then sometimes it looks like you could reach out and touch it and it would move. It's just amazing what artists can do with clothing. And so this is still the style of Orthodox icons and things like that. It wasn't because they were bad artists. This was the style they were going for. They weren't trying to make it look real. They were trying to give you sort of the inner essence of it. But in the West, artists started discovering techniques and getting the desire to make it look real. But it was a process of a couple of hundred years, you know, to develop the techniques. So this is the going style. And Cimabue, who's one of the first ones to break away and say, I'm going to do something completely different. One of his art pieces of art was a crucifix, not a painting of the crucifixion. Now I'm going to turn it around. I don't want you to focus on the fact that Jesus is not the most attractive of people in this painting, because you know what? The prophecy of Isaiah said he had no comeliness or attractiveness that we should be drawn to him. You know, we don't know that Jesus was ravingly handsome. Frankly, we don't know anything about Jesus's appearance. Well, and yeah, and he's also dying on the cross, or dead. But I just want you to kind of look at the depth and look at the. Well, I'll just turn around so you can look, and the structure in his chest. You can see the lines on the sternum and everything. This is a real step away from flat and not depth, not rounded. This is Cimabue, and it blew people's socks off. You're like, that's awesome. Let's have more of that. And his pupil, Giotto, took that and took it to the next level. So I'm going to lay this here. I brought a small one that you can't really see, but Giotto, I brought this in. This is St. Francis and the birds, but check this out. Look at their clothes, you know, for a clothing comparison. Delicate, light, draped beautifully. Something is happening in art by the time we get to Giotto. And this is barely at the year 1300 when Dante is writing. So just because they're interesting and beautiful, I'm just laying these out. And as you leave, you know, if you want to check some of them out, I'll try to give you a few extra minutes. And I know it's lunchtime then and everybody wants to eat, but if you want to take a moment to look at Giotto and Cimabue. Okay, what's in the thing? Should I take the time to get it out so that the Beatis can see it? You guys already know. I decided I should start using, because I don't want to be the one. I don't want to be the one after this long to ruin this thing. This is a book. You guys saw this. This is the wonderful book. This is a book that was published in 1587 in Venice. I mean, this book was published in 1587 in Venice. It's 450 years old. And my son got it for me for Christmas last year. It's in Latin. It was over $1,000. This is why I'm really nice to it. It was written by a Dominican friar who was apparently just quite the preacher in his day in the 1500s. So this wasn't, like during his lifetime or not long after his lifetime. And it's sermons. It's a book of sermons that he preached on the feast days of various saints. The church has days set aside for various, like St. Francis that I was showing you the picture of, and then the sermon might be related to the life of this person and how it is, exemplary and to be followed. So this is a collection of sermons on the saints' feast days. I'm not going to open it up. It's got the clasp there, but I'm not going to let people touch it for obvious reasons. But as far as I know, it has never been translated into English. Well, I can because I can read the Latin. But what I'd like to do, my Latin's getting better and better, frankly. You guys know I'm taking a Latin class, right? Where we talk in Latin in the class. It's horrifying. But I'm getting so much better. So I'm hoping to get good enough that maybe I'll work on translating it. It would be cool to be the one who translates this book finally, and so we can read the sermons. English speakers can read. Anyway, this is my dream. Anyway, this is my book. I brought it in because the younger folk were reading about the invention of printing and how it changed, the world. But anyway, thank you for humoring me again. Those of you who have always seen the book, Mrs. Ferguson, we know you have a special book, Mrs. Ferguson. It has a plexiglass. Here, there we go. Yeah, I keep it under plexiglass at home and not in the sun because, like I said, I don't want anyone to ever say, for 450 years, this book was fine. And then Michelle Ferguson got it. Totally ruined it. Totally ruined it. No, I do not. But anyway, but I don't want any moisture on it or anything. So no, I know. I'm being careful. Okay, let's actually do what we're supposed to be doing now. We just talk about the Divine Comedy. And what I want to do, first of all, do I need every week to point out the new imitation, or can you guys just see it for yourselves? So every week you have a new paragraph in the reading guide. This week's is from The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood, which some of you read with me, maybe, in junior high class. No, some of you only did the Grease, and Hannah, I think you only did the Grease and then you moved on or something. Yeah, the next year it was The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood. Anyway, it is a description of the month of May. I did a description of the month of October as my example. I would like you to pick a month, not May or October. And then you can insert in your paragraph that you're imitating distinctive characteristics of the month of your choice, right? And there may be, there will definitely be duplicates in here because there's more than 10 of you. And you know what? Some, like April is very much like May. You know what I mean? November is a little like October. So, it's okay. But don't steal my stuff word for word. Come up with something new, But again, if he puts a prepositional phrase, Howard Pyle, you put a prepositional phrase. If he puts 3 of them, you put 3 of them. If he puts 2 adverbs, you put 2 adverbs. And that's the deal. So that's your assignment for next week. So it's in your reading guide. And that said, we will just move on to our reading for this week. And the first thing I want to mention, and I feel like I wrote this down somewhere. I didn't write it down, so I'm going to have to find it. Okay, I have 2 things I want to mention. First of all, I was reading the book of First John, minding my own business, happily reading First John. And suddenly something that I've read a bajillion times jumped out at me. And I thought it was really interesting. John talks about loving the world, right? In First John, he says, if anyone loves the world, the love of God is not in him. You probably all know that First John is just all over love, just like love every other verse. It's love, love everywhere. I don't mean it that way, but it is. It's like a love fest. And he says the things that attract us in the world, the things we love in the world, in some translations, he describes them as the lust of the flesh. You've probably heard this phrase. The lust of the eyes and the pride of life. I think my NIV translates it that way. I have another translation that phrases it slightly differently. But often you will hear this, just like people talk about lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, pride of life. And it suddenly hit me. These are the upper levels of hell. This is the levels of incontinence, lust of the flesh. They just wanted what their bodies wanted. Lust of the eyes, violence. Now I want, right? Now I'm setting myself up as something because I want what others have. I want God's fame and power. I want, I don't know, peace from my own life, and I've done away with myself. What did you say, Karsten? Yeah. I want what I see, and that might be what others have. And then pride of, so this would be violence. And then fraud, the fraudulent pride. I am better than all the rest of you, and I can use all of you for anything I want, right? I can lie to you, cheat, steal, defraud you. It doesn't matter. You're just a tool because I'm better than all of you. And I'm not saying Dante had this in mind, but I thought it was a very interesting progression. And I never really thought about it being a progression before when I read First John, that it starts with one and works its way. I thought he just had 3 random things he listed, John, in his letter. It's like, oh, these are 3 things to avoid. But what if they're an actual progression? You start at one and you progress down. I thought it was an interesting connection. Yes.
When I think of this, I think of how non-Christians portray people who sin or do wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think of when you think of a narcissist, you think of a fraudulent person. The pride of their life, that's the center of their life, is to use others for their own benefit. Narcissists are portrayed more, in some ways, more dangerous than murderers, because at least a homicidal maniac is like not clear of the mind. With the pride of life, you know what you're doing, and you're just actively pursuing yourself. Yeah,
I would like to revisit that in about 10 minutes. We left off when we were traveling through the circles of violence. And then you crossed over in this week's reading into the fraud. And I just want to make a couple of comments on fraud, which tag onto what you just said. But before we go anywhere, I would like to find what I'm looking for is I wrote them all down for me. The Fortune Tellers, Canto 20. All right. This is out of order, but you read it all, and so this is fine. You might remember that the fortune tellers are down in the circles of fraud. And does anybody remember what their punishment is? People who tell the future? Yeah, it's really, really weird. Their heads are turned backwards. Yeah, so they can't see where they're going. In life, they wanted to see too much ahead, and now they can't see anything ahead for all eternity. I love this. So they cry, but see, I'm being recorded, so I need to watch it. Like he even said their tears fall down the crack in their rear ends. You know, I mean, he actually says that's where their tears run down. Like, thank you, Dante, for that. Yes, Matthias.
So in Canto 20, it speaks of Virgil's native city.
And is your question, why are we talking about Virgil's native city?
No.
Oh.
Well, kind of, but
Because that's a good question, honestly. But
what is the story behind it?
oh, okay. So in our notes, this is a great place for your notes. Oh, so you know what? Basically, this Mantua was a prophetess who was on the run, and she ended up in the swamps in northern Italy and decided to make a little town there, and it became Mantua, named for Manto. Was it Manto? Mantuo? Um, that's all. And I think the connection is simply because she's a fortune teller, and this is the circle of the fortune tellers, and Virgil is from Mantua. So he waxes eloquent. Is that enough of an answer for you? Like, is that good enough? What about Karsten has a different version. Do you have your book with you? Oh, that's fine. Oh, hello. I have it here.
One thing I'm not sure I found
Wow.
that version either, because you were saying like the rhyming scheme is
Yeah.
a little more tricky in that one.
Yeah.
The book that I have has no rhyming scheme at all.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's actually kind of really easy.
But it's Dorothy Sayers? Oh, maybe it's not the Dorothy Sayers. I saw the cover and I saw it was a Penguin Classics. That's all I saw. I didn't notice if it was Dorothy Sayers. Okay, let's see what Dorothy Sayers says. Was this in Canto 20, you said? Are we sure that? Oh, Manto. Oh, yeah. No. Daughter of Tiresias, the founding of Mantua by Manto is mentioned in the Aeneid. Thank you so much, Dorothy Sayers. That doesn't really tell us at all. She has a glossary. No, we're getting no help from Dorothy Sayers. No, I like that. This one has a glossary, all the people. So anyway, Matthias, just she's a fortune teller who fled from others and founded her own city. We'll leave it at that. So he sees these horrifying people with their heads turned backwards, crying, and the tears running down their backs and other things. And it says, I saw the image of our humanity distorted. Oh, here we go. He's going to say it more than I said it. Distorted so that the tears that burst from their eyes ran down the cleft of their buttocks. Certainly, I wept. Yeah. And that's why I want to bring it up, because it ties it to last week. I leaned against the jagged face of a rock and wept so that my guide said, Still? Still like the other fools? There is no place for pity here. Who is more arrogant within his soul? Who is more impious than one who dares to sorrow at God's judgment? Now, there is no place for pity here. I got to tell you, I do not have any knowledge of Italian, medieval or modern, but I just get this out of other people that do, okay? The word pietà, some of you know this is a work of art. Michelangelo's Pietà, Mary, the beautiful marble statue of Mary holding Jesus, the dead Jesus off the cross. Okay. Pietà in Italian means two things. It's a word that has a double meaning, just like many words in English. It means piety, and it also means pity. And so what he says in Italian is, here, Pietà lives when Pietà dies. But he means Pietà lives when Pietà dies. And it's this very clever turn of phrase. But in this one word, it's got the two opposite poles. In hell, which remember is us examining our own sin. In the story, Dante is touring hell and looking at sinners. But we're supposed to be examining ourselves. How should we treat sin in ourselves? Pity it? Oh, but you had good reasons to do it. or align ourselves with what God thinks of it, which would be piety. And he says you can't have both at the same time. You can't caress and pamper the sin and also be aligned with God's will. And that's our prayer, right? Let me see my sin the way God sees it. Let it be disgusting to me. And I think this is a reason why sometimes Dante literally makes it disgusting. I mean, some of the punishments are disgusting. And it makes you gross, you know, but that's how we're supposed to look at sin. He's not just being, I don't know, sensational and flashy. You know, I'm going to shock them. This is what sin looks like. If we see it the way God sees it, the way Beatrice comes down last week and she said, I am made in such a way that your anguish cannot touch me. You sins, your anguish cannot touch me. Right? I read this to some of you. I always go back to this, but in C.S. Lewis's book, The Great Divorce, there's a guy, you know, so residents of hell get to tour heaven. I highly recommend this book. It's not a long read, and it's just very profound and entertaining. And this guy from hell is touring heaven, and he's got this little creature, like growth, on his shoulder, and it talks to him all the time. And it says, you know, but you know, well, I know I don't think he really fits in here in heaven and everything, but I don't know what to do about it. And the angel just keeps saying, can I kill it? Like, well, yeah, no, I don't think there's any reason for that. And then the thing starts whispering in his ear, don't let him do it, don't let him do it. He could do it. You know, you'll have to live without me. You'll never to do those things again that you love to do. And the angel just keeps saying, can I kill it? Can I kill it? But it's making itself so attractive. This is the point of my story here. He pities it, right? It's like, oh, you poor little thing. I don't want him to don't kill him. And then finally he says to the angel, all right, just get it over with. And it's horribly painful. But so it's this sin. The hint is that it's some sort of sexual or lust sin that he can't live without. He feels like, and Augustine had this problem, you know, like I can't live without that. I can't live without that. And the minute the angel kills it, it writhes around on the ground. It's like this little lizard, and it turns into this beautiful white horse. When God takes care of it, the thing that was his sin turns into his greatest joy, and he jumps on this horse and, you know, gallops off, and it's just amazing. But it has to die first. It has to die first. And it doesn't want to die. So circling back to my actual point here. The sins beg for your pity. But piety says we can't feel sorry for them. We just can't feel sorry for them. And this is a lifetime process, and we won't finish it in this life. So don't feel bad. Everybody alive and walking around is still fighting this battle. That's why they call us the church militant, the church that's alive right now, the portion of the church that's alive currently, because some of us haven't been born yet and some of us are dead, you know. But the portion of the church that is still alive currently is the church militant. We're fighting. We got to fight the battle. And it's the battle, like it said at the beginning of the Divine Comedy, the double battle of the journey and the pity. Okay, that's my intro here. I'm afraid we're just going to kind of wander through because other than that, I couldn't find a real good theme. Like last week, it was this idea of pitying the sin. He's still going to deal with this, but I wrote it all out, and then I thought, I just don't see one theme. So we're just going to wander through, and we're going to wander through as far as we get. Yeah, Rhett. Oh, let's start there, because I believe that's at the beginning of your reading. So we are in the violent, right? And we're in the violent against themselves. Tell us, Rhett, the trees. How do these trees speak? And if you remember, what happens to these trees at the resurrection of the body? Do you remember? 13. It is 13.
Yeah, the violent ones themselves. What'd you say about
Oh, do you remember how they talk? Because they're trees.
no. Well, oh, they had to be bleeding, wasn't it?
Yeah. I got to read this because it's an amazing simile. I love this simile. As a green branch with one end all aflame will hiss and sputter sap out of the other as the air escapes. You've all seen this, right? Like made a bonfire, you're making s'mores or whatever, and you throw green wood, and sometimes stuff bubbles out of it, and you hear the hiss. He says, just like that. So from that trunk there came words and blood. Yes. And so I'll rephrase my other question. Do they ever get their human form back? Do you remember? They do not. He says, the tree that they're talking to, like the rest, we shall go for our husks on Judgment Day, but not that we may wear them. For it is not just that a man be given what he throws away. Here we shall drag them, and in this mournful glade our bodies will dangle to the end of time, each on the thorns of its tormented shade. They're going to hang their bodies from the branches of the trees.
Isn't there like something that like walks around it?
Yes, those who were violent with their goods. I am unclear, quite frankly, what is the difference between the wasters in the hoarders and wasters? Wastefulness. These guys are beasts as they run through the wood. So the trees are the suicide, run around and they keep getting shredded. On various levels, things happen to people. Have you noticed? And apparently you mend yourself so it can happen to you again. I know, forever. Like whatever happens to you, it's like a Sisyphus in the rock or something. It's like Prometheus's liver, if you're familiar. So Prometheus is chained to the rock, and every night the eagle eats his liver out, but then he grows a new liver.
But you still have the same
So that the evil becomes the evil.
But just a second, what did Rhett say?
You still have the same pain. Like you get.
Yes, pain doesn't get any worse. You just get it over. No, that's not heaven at all. Kyle.
I think the difference is like one, wasteful is like just partying, wasting all their money, whereas like someone buys a house and then just destroys it, like that sort of
It's a
destruction against
spiteful, aggravated way of wasting
their property. Like,
Okay.
not wasteful of their property and like wasteful of their things, or like spending money to go to wars. Like you're just sitting here, you're like, oh, I'm just gonna spend money to do this war, sort of thing. Instead of just going, oh, party here, get this, buy this, buy
Being
this.
wasteful
So
versus being
would
destructive.
vandalizing one's own property be a form of violent? Just like
Or
vandalizing in general.
Yeah, I feel like it's just a difference of being wasteful versus being destructive.
Okay, makes sense to me. You have a thought, or you just okay?
Is this
I like
Guys who have
wasteful
the
versus
urge
destructive.
to destroy things.
No, go ahead, Rhett.
Was this a circle of hell, or are we not there yet? Where they like walk in the circle? Because I remember we talked about that last year. They like walk in the circle, like, I'm gonna talk to them, and then
Yeah, that's the schismatics.
yeah.
So Muhammad, did you read about Muhammad this week, or is that next week? I think that's next week. Yeah. So you'll it's lovely. It's lovely. They're all circles, so but yeah, there are circles where something happens to you each round, and then apparently you mend as you go around the circle, so they can. Yeah, it is in this. It'll be in this week's reading.
Like escape the house? Like, can you climb up a tree or something?
Well, the one guy in here tries to hide in a bush, which is actually a dead suicide, is a soul. And he says, "Why are you ripping me to shreds?" But I don't think it's effective. They can get so this. We had violent against your neighbor, violent against yourself, but now we have violent against God. But this has several parts: violent against God, art, and nature. And you might think, okay, what is the deal? Why would those be a unit? Well, I keep looking, there's words all over in my way. And I keep to get them out of the way. But maybe I should just leave them and I just stand on the chair, take my boots off and stand on the chairs. What was I going to say? God, nature, and art. And this is actually going to get us into what we were talking about. We're talking about taking interest. So God creates, right? Nature. And this means everything that is created, right? That nature is what he created that's